Today's episode is part of our special series with Q2 called The Experience Factor. Over a series of episodes, I'll talk to consumer banking experts and financial institution leaders about how account holder experiences and engagement contributes to long-term success. We'll discuss practical, proven steps to differentiating and growing your financial brand. Welcome to The Experience Factor. Hello and welcome to Banking Transformed, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Maroos, owner and CEO of the Digital Bank Report and co-publisher of the Financial Brand. Banks and credit unions must innovate faster and deliver flexible, scalable, and differentiated offerings to keep up with the customer's changing expectations. This is best achieved through a collaboration with solution providers and fintech organizations that offer customizable, digital-first offerings. In this episode of Banking Transformed, Deena Otto, the COO of Stanford Credit Union, and Dan Collins, Director of Digital Development at Visions Credit Union, share how their organizations are revolutionizing their approach to innovation. Rather than building solutions from scratch or undertaking very time-consuming custom integrations, these institutions are leveraging pre-built components and standardized integration frameworks to deploy new solutions rapidly. Hear how these two credit unions punch above their fighting weight by reducing what would typically be year-long development cycles into projects that are deliverable in a matter of weeks or months. Q2's Innovation Studio supports over 400 banks and credit unions, as well as a number of fintech firms with thousands of differentiated experiences. This innovation hub enables financial institutions of all sizes to accelerate innovation cycles while minimizing the development overhead. Financial firms also benefit from a broader ecosystem of certified third-party developers and pre-integrated fintech solutions, which extends the development capabilities beyond what is already in-house. So Deena and Dan, I'm so happy you're on the show today. It is always fun to talk to organizations that are maybe smaller on the scale of assets and people realize that can really do some great things. So before we start, Deena and Dan, can you share a bit about your organization and also your respective roles? Why don't we start with you, Deena?
Sure. Hi. Good to talk to you today. So Deena Otto with Stanford Credit Union. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I oversee kind of all the marketing and the retail teams.
And Dan?
Sure. I am Dan Collins. So I'm the Director of Digital Development at Visions. We have about 260,000 members, $5.5 billion in assets, 57 branches in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So we have a pretty physical presence, but I oversee the teams that kind of create success and experience for our members in our digital channels. So we do custom software development, online banking integrations, member and employee facing web applications as well. So I have a few teams, but we're all focused on the member coming through digital channels to try to find something.
And what was the asset size of your organization, Dan?
$5.5 billion.
Okay. And Deena?
We're about $4 billion with 90,000 members based out of the Palo Alto Bay Area. Yeah.
Great. So the first question is really directed to both of you. We understand that member experiences and expectations have changed greatly, actually since COVID, but even before that, and that the way we address those experiences has really changed over the last several years. So Dan, I'll start with you. What pressures does this put on credit unions to innovate, to try to stay ahead of what's going on, not just in financial services, but in other industries as well?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's no longer just what a financial industry is doing. It's what everybody's doing. And I think the biggest thing we've noticed is almost around timeliness or timelines. So, our members can order food and track its delivery from the door to from the restaurant to the door. They, know as soon as their ride share is approaching, their physical location. It's all kind of based around where they are, but also when they are, if that makes sense. So, for us, it's like we're, in the industry, you hear a lot about personalization and custom content for, groups. We almost see timeliness as a form of personalization now, where everybody kind of expects to know when and why something's happening, when it happens and why it happens. So it goes beyond the standard way that it used to work, which was as long as somebody got a notification at some point, they were happy. But now it's real time. It's knowing in the moment when something happens or doesn't happen that they expect. I think that's the biggest trend we've noticed.
It's interesting because it's not just telling things what has happened, which is what I'll take as a rear view, mirror view, right, but it's also telling them a little bit about what we think is going to happen. Yes. So, it's an interesting transformation of the way we need to communicate, the way we have to build offers, the way we expand the integration and the deployment of solutions across the entire journey. So Deena, from your perspective, how has the role of innovation or the process of innovation changed at your organization?
Yeah, I'd actually say that, we've always had to rely on digital. We only have 6 branches, and we know that only 4,000 of our members actually visit a branch. So our members are very, very tech savvy and have always, quite frankly, had kind of the pressure. We've always had that pressure of needing to make sure that we were able to innovate and service them. I think, like what Dan said, maybe just that level or that expectation is, maybe just, adjusted. And so, but we've always had to at Stanford Federal Credit Union make sure that we were innovative and able to meet our members digitally. It's always been kind of our focus. So that's, we've whether it's the personalization service or the, notifications and letting them know maybe where their status is on a loan. It's something that we've always known that we needed to do.
So taking that a step further, Deena, first of all, congratulations on being awarded the 2024 Q2 Excellence Award for Innovation. Why did you receive that award?
Thank you very, very, very much. Yeah, I think, for us, what kind of the reason we saw it is we knew that, we use Q2 obviously as our banking partner, and as they've rolled out their innovation studio, and we knew that we needed to get whether it's servicings or products kind of faster to market, it was a good place for us to lean on, because we knew that if a fintech company was in the innovation studio, that half the development was already done. And so, we were able to kind of turnkey in the last couple of years, roll out some new kind of services and features to our members in a very, very kind of quick manner that we maybe in the past wouldn't have been able to do. Or honestly, if we went with a different partner that was not in the innovation studio, we knew it was going to take us maybe a little bit longer.
So what, if you look into the last 9 months, what really is one of it doesn't have to be a big deal at your organization, but what have you been proud of being able to innovate, being able to bring to market maybe faster, maybe better, maybe it got taken up faster? What's the claim to fame there?
Yeah, so I'd say maybe a couple things, but first I'm going to start with kind of our partnership with Agent IQ, which is a chat, and that chat has an AI feature. That's been really a good one for us. Actually, 50% of all of our kind of interactions are handled by the AI portion of the chat. So Stan is who we have dubbed our AI, named him Stan. That's been really proud for us. We've also been able to, we really want to make sure that the Stanford community knows that we're continuing to focus on them and fundraising for them. And so we've also been able to kind of lean on the innovation studio to, make it easier for our members to donate to the different Stanford entities, or really any charitable organizations. But what we find is our members are still choosing Stanford entities to donate on. So that's probably maybe the two, but there's maybe a list.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because as I understand it, not only can you use one of the partners that Q2 has, but you can bring an idea like the donation platform and say, we need to do this better, faster, more integrated and digital. And you can work together on that, which in effect also raises the level of what maybe Q2 understands to be in the marketplace, or it may bring a brand new solution to the marketplace. It's pretty cool.
It is,
So Dan, as I understand it, you have an interesting story. Although you had no background in banking, you were able to use the SDK platform. Now, how did that transpire and what did you use it for initially?
Yeah. Well, so I guess to build on that, yeah, I came more from a B2B or B2C commerce world, building software, it mostly on the web, but software that would interact with, a CRM system, an ERP system, behind the scenes, and they all had SDKs as well. So SDKs were not new, but banking was new, right?
Yeah.
And so jumping right into it seemed like it wouldn't be a realistic task. But, while most of the SDKs that I'd used were kind of poorly documented or hard to get support for, limited a developer's functionality because only so much was exposed, et cetera, Q2 was kind of very different from that. So it was pretty obvious when I first got my hands on it because unlike many SDKs, this was actually open source. So as a developer, if I did have any questions, I had an immediate path to figure out what was going on because I could see the code. But outside of that, I'll say that Q2 built their SDK, quote, right, because what it boils down to is just an abstraction. So from a software development place, I understand design patterns, I understand engineering from a software mindset. They built their SDK to fit that mold. So any software developer with an understanding of those things can jump right in. And, I'm starting at Visions and they're talking about things like cores. I'd never heard the term core. I wasn't going to start writing software that interacted with it, right? That wasn't something I would feel comfortable doing, the third week on the job. So, but Q2's SDK abstracts that all away. All those implementation details I don't need to know, because what I'm there to do is build something, for our members. I'm concerned about the details, but not focused on the details, right? I need to know that they're going to be taken care of, but that's where Q2's experience comes in. They have all the experience in banking that I don't. So I can bring my software development experience, plug it right in, and kind of get to work quickly. I've told people before, it's kind of like a box of high grade tools. We get to draw the blueprints and we build the house, but instead of a hammer and putting all the framing up by hand, we have a nail gun. Or instead of turning over a bucket and standing on that, we have scaffolding available. So it just allows us to focus on the details that matter, and it allowed me to jump right in and kind of take a lot of that question or constraint away, and it kind of empowered me because now it's like, wait, I know that term, I know that that idea, and so now I can just use the good documentation that Q2 has, or jump right into the back end code and figure out what is it expecting, what am I passing this, what am I using here. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, and it's interesting, Dan, because you referenced the innovation process here in. Since you haven't been in banking, but it's been the same in almost every industry, but in banking especially, innovation takes a long time. You couldn't sneeze in less than a year in the banking world that I grew up in, and that's a while ago. But the reality is, with all this compartmentalization and the distribution of insights and the capability to do what you just talked about, you have the ability to really speed up the innovation process, which makes it easier not only to implement and deploy, but also to test, correct?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that Q2 offers us right now is things like rapid prototyping. again, you're building on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. You don't need to spend all your time on, front end design, because they have a design language that you can tap right into. So testing, prototyping, user, end-to-end testing is no longer long drawn out processes. Yeah. They're kind of baked into the sauce, so to speak. And you can kind of just you hit the ground running with all of that as part of your just kind of cycle. It's now a cycle instead of a new project every time.
So innovation takes a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's about a new account opening experience. Sometimes it's about a new way to process loans, or to, as Deena brought up earlier, to actually communicate with consumers and members. So let's hear about some specific innovation success stories from each of you that resonated with your members. Dan, can you tell me a little bit about your home mortgage tracker?
This was one of the earlier projects I got to work on with my team, but the problem that we faced was we had all of our mortgage process information and statuses inside of our core, but there was no easy way for a member to access that information, especially through the digital channel. So what ended up happening was a heavy load on our contact center, because they'll pick up the phone and, hey, what's going on with my mortgage? I haven't heard anything lately, or whatever that case might be. Some people, when they're buying a home, that's the top of their mind every day, right? So they want to know what's going on. And so at that time we had roughly 15 calls per mortgage per month happening. So it was putting a burden on both the contact center and then the mortgage team, right? So again, that SDK offered some pretty quick scaffolding. So we kind of threw together a prototype idea that basically we dubbed it the mortgage pizza tracker, because it really just boiled down to like a filling progress bar similar to the Domino's pizza tracker. It's going into the oven, It's coming out, it's coming to your door. Same idea, but it's in appraisal, it's in these various steps of the process. And to your point, it was so easy to prototype and show off that it was a quick turnaround internally to get that vetted and approved. And then once we did roll that out, it was a pretty quick success story, in the sense that our call volume dropped in that first month by about 44%. We were down to a little over 7 calls a mortgage. So it almost halved it, which was great for the team, the internal team especially. It gave them more time to focus on moving those mortgages along instead of reporting out where they were. And it obviously made a improvement for the member, because now they could just, refresh their digital banking page every day and get an updated status. Yep. And then over that next 3 months, it averaged out to about a 31% decrease in calls related to mortgages. That's mortgages across the board. So I would have to believe that the status calls dropped significantly. And so it turned out to be so successful. The mortgage team came back and said, "Hey, can we do the same thing for HELOCs?" So
there you go.
It worked out pretty well for us. So that was a quick and really impactful win from our side.
So Deena, from my perspective, what I saw in some of the front end work that I was given to look at what you've done, you had both a way to deal with international payments and wires, if I'm not mistaken, and also a financial literacy initiative. You can take either one of those if you want, and give us a little bit of a background and a results status report on those.
Yeah. So I'll maybe kind of tackle the international numbers, just given the fact that we're in the kind of tech communities as well as Stanford. We actually serve a large amount of international members. And this actually was, it's been a while now, but this would have been kind of one of our first times leveraging the SDK of Q2's. We basically partnered with Wise International Service, and we just built Wise within our online banking to make it just convenient for our members to, go ahead and send and send international wires. we continue to, it's still very, 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 popular feature for our members. They still are able to, leverage it. And then the financial literacy, side, again, just given kind of the community, we serve, we obviously, we onboard and open a lot of student accounts every single year. It's very important to us that we make sure, even though our student account is free and has kind of all the bells and whistles, we still want to make sure that we are educating, the students on financial literacy, what a FICO score is, all those things. And so we were able to leverage Zogo out of the innovation studio and partner with them and get that rolled out really quickly. Our members love their pineapple points. That's what they're called. And I think, a couple months ago when I was at Q2, Connect, we had just rolled it out and we've seen, some really strong results, and members continue to love to use Zogo.
So at Stanford Federal Credit Union, you mentioned about the fact that, you're in the Silicon Valley. So there's a lot of innovation mindset there. And I've been there a few times. And what's interesting is every institution anywhere in the area, all the people and everybody else just has that proactive look at things, I guess. But your organization, you have to build a culture so that really anybody can feel part of the overall innovation process, that you have an innovation mindset. How do you do that at your organization? How do you get people involved across the organization rather than simply being a department? And just along the same lines, how do you make sure that you deploy against it? Because I have an example. I visited a financial institution out in your area that had a lot of amazing innovations, but they never made a big enough deal about it in the marketplace where people recognize that, oh, by the way, our organization's really doing things differently, and you're benefiting greatly from our innovation process. So how do you deal with the internal items, but how do you also deal with the external deployment of innovations?
Yeah. So I'd say, honestly, it starts with the kind of that member experience mindset. I think everybody in the organization has that member experience. It really drives sort of everything we do. We want to be easy to do business with, is sort of how we dub it internally. Right. We don't want there to be a speed bump with our members having to work with us. And so, I mean, honestly, that's where it starts with. It starts with kind of the member and that mindset. And I think that just culturally, when you come into the organization, that you can't help but, know and understand that that's what we're living for. And that's our deliverables every single day. And it drives our roadmap, right? It drives our online banking, our mobile roadmap. It drives sort of every roadmap. What do we need to do to be easier to do business, to be business with? And then, I think as far as making sure that our members understand that we're different. I mean, some of it is meeting their expectations. We have I say this, to the frontline teams all the time. We've members who are, they demand digital, they demand innovation. And so for us, it's making sure that, we're meeting their needs, and then making sure that we're kind of talking to our members about it, and standing out there. I think the Stanford brand helps us too. We'll get that sometimes if we've, maybe done something to upset a member, they'll throw the Stanford brand name out at us. This is not something we would have expected from that
Stanford. Yeah, exactly.
And so it also is a little bit of living up to, it's living up to the brand and making sure that, the team and everybody's, living up to the brand. But it's honestly just sort of meeting our members where our members are at.
So, that's interesting because it gets down to your size almost is an advantage, I would imagine, because you can move rather quickly and get those partnerships working towards innovative process. But also, again, the larger competitors, they're not able to move nearly as quickly. So that's kind of interesting that way. So, Dan, at Visions Federal Credit Union, you've done quite well with SDK implementations, but not everything goes according to plan. What are a couple challenges that you've seen along the way that you've had to adjust to? Maybe it's internal, maybe it's external, maybe it's just your mindset. What is a challenge that organizations have to remember to think about as they're deploying new implementations?
So I guess in terms of challenges, what we sometimes face it's a double-edged sword when things are so easy a lot of times, because we might, I don't want to say get over our skis, but we might get into a case where something seems like, well, we can absolutely do that, and technically we might be able to. So I think what my team faces a lot is, with the SDK, we are able to technically implement things quickly, compose solutions quickly, demo things quickly, to your point. And so what happens on our end sometimes is, once all the other pieces start to fall into place for that deployment, to actually reach our members, there's a lot of things outside of the technical that we maybe overlook or leave out of the process because we're moving rapidly. Luckily, we catch them before they get to the members, but in this case, sometimes we'll put together a really cool thing and show it off, and get all the way to the near finish line, and then realize that yes, technically we have accomplished this goal, but maybe we missed something along the way with either regulation or the member. Again, meeting the member where they are. Maybe we made some assumptions to start with and built a technical solution for that. Those assumptions maybe were misplaced or wrong. So there's that double-edged sword of being able to be so nimble and innovate quickly, that every now and then you innovate so quickly that you didn't actually innovate. You did something different, but it's not necessarily innovation, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, Dan. As I look at this, you have kind of like a kid in the candy store mentality sometimes. You can do almost anything. And on top of that, Q2 brings you a lot of partners that have been pre-vetted that allow the integration of what they bring to the table relatively easy. How do you make the decision as to who to partner with and what to implement?
I would say we have learned a lot over the years with this, but I think the biggest thing is what you already brought up, which is identifying partners with focus, right? So like the fintechs that we partner with need to be doing the things that we're not competent with, right? That's why we want them as partners. If that partner is a jack of all trades, that's kind of what we already are. We are that jack of all trades. We need the focus, and we need what they're doing deliberately and measured that we don't have the resources to do. So I think when we approach a new partnership, that's what we're looking for is, do they share our values? That's where we always kind of start from our community banking mentality. But so as long as they share our values and do the thing that we can't do, and they're doing it with a measured and deliberate approach, that's where we start. And then from there, it's obvious, technical implementation details and all that fun stuff that Q2 again abstracts out of the way for most of it. But I would say that's our focus. Not to reuse the same term, but we focus on their focus, right?
Yeah. Deena, from your perspective, I look at all the different opportunities, all the different partners that Q2 and other solution providers bring to the table through their partnerships. Do you go, I'm going to do a little bit of an analogy here, but do you go to the grocery store with a list of exactly what you want to solve for? Or do you go up and down the aisles every once in a while and say, what's going on here that I haven't thought about that maybe we bring to the table? Or is it a combination?
I'd say it's a combination. I think what sort of makes the project list first is that what are we trying to solve for the member? And then we go first and look at the innovation studio because we know we can, get something launched fairly quickly. But then I'd also say that, and this is something that I think has been a bit more of a focus in the last couple of years for us, is it is going and looking to, in the grocery aisle and saying, wow, is there something out there maybe that we, should be looking at, or we should have considered. We do a little bit of both. We have a committee, a digital, kind of committee, and we sort of put the onus on that, committee, and it's made up of, just different various, areas in the credit union, not just kind of the tech department. And we put sort of pressure on them to maybe go look to see, is there, and that allows us to be proactive, right? Is there something there that we hadn't considered that we could sell for our members?
So you do count on Q2 to bring you ideas, new solutions they have brought to the table, but also, as you said, from a priority standpoint, you're really bringing your list to the market and saying, geez, this is a problem. We got to put that, we got to know where we're going before we decide how to get there. We have to figure out our destination. So on the back end of your implementations, Deena, how do you measure success on your programs? I know it changes and it's different for this program versus the other, but do you set up a measurement process up front for anything you're implementing?
I think everything, I'd say. So, I'd say that when you're sort of working through the project, it's the deadline. We actually do some, pretty heavy planning every year for our projects. And so it's first being able to see, were we able to meet the deadline? And, I think Dan brought this up a little bit. You're as good as your partners, right? You need to be able to rely on your partners to help you meet your deadline. You don't want them to get in the way of you meeting your deadline. So, I think that's sort of the first within the project. But then I'd say on the other side of that, it's making sure that, we've set metrics of even why we're doing this. So, was the goal to get, call volume down, or was the goal to get, message volume down? Was the goal to make it, maybe we had a complaint, maybe members were complaining about some process. And so, we were able to implement it digitally. And so they could just go self-serve, themselves. And so then we're going to consider that a win and continue to monitor and track. Do we see that volume of that new feature we rolled out just, get bigger and bigger, and more members are utilizing it? So I think we have sort of two goals.
Okay. So Dan, when you're using innovation, are you looking to bring a new product, service, technology to the member, or are you focused more on getting rid of friction and making it easier for the member to do business with you? Or is it both?
I was just going to say, I think it has to be both. And I think they aren't always separate, right? Sometimes removing friction offers new opportunities for, say, new products or new ways to present products. So even a type of innovation might be unification, right? So another thing that people are starting to become accustomed to is this idea that it shouldn't be hard to find everything, right? And it shouldn't. We
Right.
got to the point where we built so much that now it's hard to find all the individual things that we've built. So again, you continue to innovate, and it's not necessarily anything new. But when you take away the friction by, say, unifying, like services together, maybe now you have a new channel to offer ideas for new products or offer aspects to the member that they hadn't considered because they've never seen all those things together at once. So it didn't make sense to offer it, but now it does. So again, it's definitely both. I would say the obvious, fix that we can offer, the quickest, is removing pain points, removing that friction. But to your point about how do you measure success, we do put in those strict kind of KPIs or outcomes that we expect to see, monitor those. But ideally, during the monitoring, you start to identify new areas of opportunity at the same time.
So as I get into your minds and other guests that we have sometimes, I think about, geez, how would I do these things? And I think about what challenges of what I have had along the way. And a lot of the innovation that's being done today is bits of what your core provider says they can do. And everyone has a core provider of some sort. So when you have that, how do you sell internally what I would say the doubling down on an investment of something that maybe your core could do, but you have a much easier path through your innovation studio at Q2 and with Q2 itself? How do you sell what I'm going to call the double investment aspect of it to your management?
For us, it always comes down to again that explanation of value, right? So cost does not mean negative value. It just, you have to prove that the cost will return on that investment, right? So for us, from my side of things, the way that I have to present, new ideas for development or new systems to augment systems that we already have, that we're already paying for. A lot of times it comes down to maybe internal friction reduction, right? So,
Yeah.
you can point to that system that does that thing already, but if that system isn't easy to use and the employee experience is low, that's an obvious, area that improvement can be had, right? So that's an easier sell on my part, But then in the case of a member interacting, sometimes the core does it, but there's no entry path for that member to interact with it. Yes, we can see it. Yes, we have access to it, but the member doesn't. So we again augment that system with a middleware to give them access to their own information, but in a secure, and security will always come into it as well. That's another way to sell these tools, because that's something, again, we are heavily invested in security. So to present something as, yes, our this system offers it, but maybe its intended use case was not what we want to use it for, so in that way it's not secured for that use. But if we build that middleware on top, now we have control over that security. Now we have control over authentication, authorization, least privilege, whatever you want to call it. We have entry point now, as opposed to maybe reusing something that wasn't intended for that use, even though it's there.
So innovation is no longer a calendarized item. So it's not like we have our 2024 innovation, we have our 2025 innovations. It really is a rolling calendar. So I'm going to ask both of you this as we wrap up this conversation. Deena, what's on your innovation roadmap that you can share with us? And what are you the most excited about as we're going forward?
So probably what's going to a lot drive 2025 is if we look at bringing value to the member, it's going to be a lot on the card side. So, a lot of kind of self-service features on the card side. So things, if the members can, if there's been fraud in their account and they need to submit a claim, we've made that really nice and easy, and they can go look to see where that claim is, right?
Yeah.
Where it is, in process, because that's always a big question that always is lighting up the phones or the chat. Members want to know, but I'd say a lot of credit card, kind of debit card features is probably driving the roadmap. And then the other thing that we take this approach of, I'll go out to my retail teams and we'll get a list of what our members calling about the most. Right. So, and we kind of do this every year, what are sort of the top, 5 to 10 things that members are reaching out, that we're making them reach out to us because we've made that experience difficult for them. And then we sort of back into it and say, okay, can we, leverage, digital to kind of take that, get the phone call so that it's not there. How do we make it easy for the member? And that's usually how we go about it. But for 2025, I'm going to say it's going to be a lot of cards. And then also I'd say, kind of looking into the AI piece, but for us, it's maybe the AI piece in getting information to our teams as quickly as possible so that they can service the member, right? So that they can look up procedures or look up processes, really easy, so that they're able to answer that question as quickly as possible for the member.
It's interesting. You referenced it also. It's not always about things that are difficult for your members today, but how do you make things easier? It's what are their expectations? How can you get ahead of the curve on what's challenging? You look at fraud and risk, and I know that, I have a relative who last week had 3 different cards from the same organization. In fact, one was a replacement for a previous card, have fraud on it. And you go, something's wrong with one of my direct deposits, and the financial institution had to help them with it. But the financial institution brought it to their attention, which really made it easier before it was difficult for the member or for the client. So Dan, from your perspective, what's on your roadmap and what are you excited about as we look to the new cycle of the calendar?
Yeah. we have some card stuff in the works, but we, to feed off Deena. But I would say what I referenced at the beginning with the timeliness and the just in time kind of, or to your point, proactive, messaging and things like that. So we are getting more into the native SDK for mobile to try to kind of hit those members at the moment or around the time that makes the most sense for them. So things like geofencing for notifications and also just, transaction level kind of alerts and things like that go to a more useful place than, say, their email, right? Email's great, but most of the time people aren't checking their email during the action. So we're trying to expand more into that kind of just-in-time and real-time notification space.
Yep. We've come to a close in this conversation, but I for both of you, because you have so many things going on, have I missed anything from my end? And is there anything that you want to share that maybe I missed?
I was sitting there thinking, I think my organization would be upset if I didn't mention the other thing that's sort of big on our roadmap is onboarding. We're in the process of sort of building an onboarding process digitally that the member, we're going to present them with sort of the top 5 things that we think are most important for them to do with us, add their card to the wallet, right? Making sure they're, opting out of, paper statements, making sure they're getting the direct deposit with us. And we're going to display kind of a payment feature with them. We have a partner that we're working with. And so that's another big one for us, is making sure that we're getting that engagement early on in the relationship.
Well, it's interesting because that's taken the AI tool. Because it's not just about, they have this, not this, I'm going to offer that. No, it's not selling anymore. And we've heard that from more and more organizations that we're moving away from selling to actually trying to fulfill a challenge that the member or customer may have that they don't know they have yet. And it may be as simple as a security option that you just brought up, because it may not be selling anything at all, but simply rounding out their portfolio. Because I think one challenge that we see in the industry right now is this silent attrition, where yes, we still have the customers, we still have the member, but we realize if we look at flow of funds, that these people are doing business elsewhere more and more. And I've got to find a way to make it so they have a reason for going to my phone every day to look up your organization, to look up, it may be as simple as implementing a credit line, that you give them a small credit line that takes care of any overdrafts, anything that can happen. But you just keep on prompting the fact that, hey, if you want to buy something, you're $300 short, remember, you can push a button and get that $300. There's just all these aspects that are not just selling, it's just making banking easier for the customer. Dan, anything on your side? And I saw you shaking your head on onboarding. So yeah. I can tell, that's a key element right now, because I think everybody realizes, I wouldn't say we've gotten complacent, but a lot of the things that we take for granted, which is a good customer staying with us, they aren't really doing that anymore. They may stay, they may not leave, but that doesn't mean they're staying with us as fully as they were in the past.
We're looking at that exact same problem, trying to figure out the best way to solve it the same way. And to your point, not just a cookie cutter list of this or that. It does have to be a lot more personalized, a lot more engaging for that member. Even from what you're describing, which is, if the first interaction that you have with a financial institution is not interactive, you may have already lost them, right? Because at that point it is a transaction. It's a transactional experience versus a relationship.
And you talked about at the very beginning, you both did that. All these other organizations, non-financial, keep engaged on an ongoing basis, and they're partnering with other organizations. I mean, we're getting our meals delivered by a car sharing service. These kind of partnerships are coming together to make life easier for us. So thank you both for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's always good to hear what's going on in the front line, but more importantly, the reality that some of the most innovative financial institutions in the country today are small to mid-sized organizations that can move at speed and scale to innovate in a way that even the biggest firms can't do. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Banking Transformed, the winner of 3 international awards for podcast excellence. If you enjoy our work, please give us a positive review. In addition, check out my recent articles on the financial brand and the fantastic research we're delivering for the Digital Bank Report. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Haslage, audio engineer, Chris Fafalius, and video producer, Will Pritz. I'm your host, Jim Roos. Until next time, remember, building an innovative culture requires vision, collaboration, and the ability to deliver at speed and scale.